single shot, or you could do MVB again if you want. It's not really going to make a difference. The single shot is more lower viscosity. So if you have maybe some low spots or something like that, it would kind of fill that in. You have much more playtime with this material in comparison, and it flows more. And then you would broadcast into that, right? So this system also, this photo here will also show what I would highly, highly recommend to everybody, which would be putting ballistic squire over top of the poly at the end. Yeah, if you want to take a picture, Keel, this would be what I would highly recommend for your floor. Although I would say that since your current floor has been down for like 20 years, you probably don't have any kind of issues underneath. As long as you profile right, you probably don't need to do an independent. But that's something you should probably determine once you remove everything, you finish your discovery process of grinding, and look at the slab, maybe do a moisture test and decide from there. But more than likely, you'll probably just need this system here. So, and it's just a different way to layer things to achieve a different outcome, essentially. All right, so another system very similar. This would be like your much more fast polyurea system. So this would be like your absolutely no moisture, trying to be as quick as possible system, right? Polyurea is a very fast material. It's a lot less forgiving. Not usually a beginner material, but exactly the same process. It goes down thinner. Polyurea is probably going to go down like with a 5 to 7 squeegee. But this is like the gold standard here. All right, the platinum flake. All right, so we got quartz system. So that system in the front I showed you guys, the solid gray one. The photo here is clear, but really you want to pigment that. So same deal. You put down your MRAP, you broadcast your quartz, encapsulate it with polyaspartic, right? Pigment that can be gray, can be black, white, tan, can be charcoal. Any of those main colors. Decorative quartz, so if you're not trying to do the solid color, you probably want to do an additional layer, right? So anything that telegraphs will show through more. So essentially here we have the breakdown. You have your MRAP, you got your quartz. That clear layer in the middle is going to be a polyaspartic, probably like fallout or aftershock. And then you broadcast another layer of quartz, and then you come back and you encapsulate it one more time. What I did not mention yet is that every time, whether it's the quartz here or a flake here, after you come back, so let's say, excuse me, I broadcast that, it's finished curing, I come back, the finger test is what I kind of skipped over earlier. So when you come back to your floor, whether it's the next day or however many hours, depending on what your system is, you come back, do the finger test. So you take your thumb, find a nice corner where no one's going to see. Maybe you might only have access to a doorway. Go down in the corner and press your finger right down like you're trying to make a fingerprint, essentially, right? Light pressure. Is it sticky? Is it moving? No. All right. So now I'm going to apply more pressure. I'm going to see if I can't make an indentation. All right. If it makes an indentation, it's still pretty soft. If you step out onto that floor, you're probably going to make a footprint. All right. I'm going to come back a little bit later. Now, if it passes that test, there's no fingerprint, no mushing. All right, cool. Now I'm going to go to level 2. Take my fingernail and stab it straight into the floor. No twisting, right? Do I make a fingernail mark? All right, maybe it's still a little bit soft. If I cleat out there and I'm wearing my cleats doing my next layer, I'm going to make holes in my floor. All right, so I'm going to probably give it a little bit more time. Probably doesn't need a lot. At least if it's warm, it won't need a lot. Now the final test is you take your fingernail and you stab and you twist. All right, if you twist and nothing's happening, but you're not outside of your recoat window, then you're good. A lot of our products have really good recoat windows, so you're probably good. As long as it's not been like days, you're probably okay. And if you're not sure, just give us a call and we'll be like, hey, how many hours has it been? You'd be like, X, Y, Z. And we'll say, okay, you have this many more hours left. All right. So the flex system. So this is the actual solid quartz outside over there, but for outside. So the flex system is basically a flexible membrane. It's a moisture cure urethane system. So you have 2 layers. The bottom layer is going to be your flex base, and it's an elongation, which essentially is like how far can it stretch. that's going to be like 180%. Yes, ma'am. Can you just put it right there for me on the table? Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am. All right, sorry about that, gentlemen. So your flex base has a very decent elongation. So the reason that you want to do a flexible membrane outside is because, you know, it varies depending on what state you're in, what climate you're in. But in Virginia, you know, it could be 70 during the day and it could be 30 at night or whatever, depending on the season. And your concrete's going to expand and contract, right? So now you have your control joints, which will theoretically lessen some of the impact of that. I mean, theoretically. But if you put down your MRAP or a poly or a metallic epoxy, that's not going to stretch all. They're more rigid, right? So basically what happens is the concrete's moving and the epoxy's not going to move, so it'll shear off. And you'll actually see that. I've gone out to jobs to look at them, and it almost makes like a half moon, like a peeling look. It almost looks like if I put down like something circular, but then like half the circle smushed to the floor is what it kind of looks like. I'm sure it can look other ways too, but that's what I've seen a lot of. So this will essentially move with the concrete so it doesn't peel off or shear off. Your next layer will be your flex bind, and that's going to be your bind coat. That has elongation as well. It's a little bit less. I want to say it's like 140%. And basically, so you do flex base, flex bind, you broadcast into the flex bind, right? And these are both single components. There's no mixing involved. You just got to make sure you spin it up to make sure it's not, separated or anything if it's been sitting a while. They are very thick, and if it's cold, then you're gonna be pushing peanut butter. So what personally I do is I reduce it a little bit. So I put a little bit of solvent in there. You don't want to do too much. You want to keep that pretty low. A good rule of thumb with solvents when you're diluting anything is no more than 10%. Like that's like the threshold. And that's pretty much across the board. So if you, for whatever reason, you're like, oh, it's just too thick, it's too cold. Now you can also warm your materials up beforehand. But if you're driving out somewhere, you just got to put it inside the cab and turn the heat on, or just keep it inside so it stays warm. You also don't want to have your epoxies and different materials getting cold via sitting on the concrete. If you're just sitting in your garage this winter, put them on like a pallet or on a piece of wood or something, because essentially the concrete will wick any warmth out of it through the floor, and you'll actually get like a crystallization on the bottom of your bucket. And the only thing you can really do, besides throwing it away, is putting it in like a super hot bathtub and letting it kind of uncrystallize and like remixing it back up. So, and that's the whole thing. You just don't let that happen. Essentially, it's pretty easy. Just keep it inside. So your binder coat, broadcast your quartz, your flake, or your sand, or whatever your media is, and then you encapsulate that. If you're doing the double broadcast, it would be the same process. So this system here would be the double broadcast. If you're doing the colored quartz, is essentially the same as this one here. You just have at the bottom, instead of an MVB, you have your flex system. Neat floors. So the floor you're sitting on now, this white floor, is a neat system. Basically, you can do white, you can do gray, you can do all the standard colors of pigment. But the reason there's an additional layer in there, so basically you're replacing that flake with another layer. So I like to do single shot because it kind of levels a little bit. But if I have any, like we talked about earlier, a grinder nick or some kind of imperfection in the floor, that additional layer is going to help mask that or help hide that, right? If you don't, you will definitely, if you have just the two layers, just MRAP and like a urethane, you're probably going to see everything. The whole floor, every little nick, nook, and grinder mark is going to be visible. It's going to telegraph right through it. So you add that additional layer. Excuse me, you could technically do MRAP on that second layer, but the single shot, like I said earlier, is a little more lower viscosity, and it'll kind of help level some of that out as well. So, and it doesn't have to be particularly thick. You can go a little thicker if you want, but standard thickness is pretty much standard on that. So basically you want to pigment all three. So if this white floor here you're sitting on is exactly this system here, and all three layers were pigmented white. The reason you pigment all three layers, and let's say I had a big metal toolbox and I didn't have any wheels on it, and I was like, oh, well, I got to move it over here a couple inches or whatever, and I gouge my floor. Well, it's white all the way through. You're just going to hide those gouges as best as it can. We didn't really talk about urethanes yet. So we have a MSD high wear urethane over there. It's a really good urethane. Basically, that's a dip and roll system. So that's a little bit different than all the other ones that we've talked about so far. Most of these are done with squeegees and back roll. This one is a dip and roll. And you can even add aluminum oxide to this. So the floor you're on now has aluminum oxide. If you look at it in the angle of light, you see like little speckles. It's aluminum oxide. It kind of mats out a little bit, because usually this would be like a super glossy floor. It mats it out over here, and part of where you're sitting there is more glossy than the rest, because I went extra thick there. If I go extra thick, like most of this is the standard thickness, so you can see the speckles over there. It's kind of gloss. There was a really bad imperfections in the floor there, and I was trying to hide them, so I kind of lost my consistency of sheen because of that. But aluminum oxide, when you put it in, when you dip and roll, you want to set it in there and then just kind of touch the top of your puddle. Don't smash it down in the puddle, right? If you smash it down, it grabs all that aluminum oxide and smashes it into the roller. And then when you're rolling it out, you'll have these lines. And it'll be like line every time it spins, it'll leave a line of aluminum oxide, and it kind of looks dumb. So you just gently get it wet, roll it gently, and then you roll it out. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. Well, I'll just talk about it now. So you're going to have somebody putting it out, doing the W's, right? And then when you get a certain amount of distance and a certain amount of time, I think it's like 10 minutes go by, you have somebody go back and they cross roll. So they set it down gently on the end, and the whole idea is to go back and forth without lifting the roller. No pressure on the roller at all. If anything, I'm holding the stick up to take the weight of the stick, and I'm just letting it lightly drag across the floor, and that evens out your finish. And it looks really good if you do it right. I would not squeegee that. I mean, technically yes, technically you could squeegee that, but I would highly recommend you do the dip and roll method for sure. Typically, when you do that, you have two people. One person's putting it out, the other person just goes back and just cleans it. Do the cross roll. And if you have a third person, they can cut ahead of you, do all the edge work, so you're not sitting there messing with it, because it's with the the 18-inch roller, you can't really get on the edges that good without slapping the wall. Another good thing to keep in mind is if you set your roller down, you're going to end up making an indentation in your roller, and it'll be another thing where you have lines going around the floor. Metallics. All right. So this floor here was done with single shot. I think we actually mixed a couple things together. We don't normally do that, but I was kind of messing around. But basically, metallics, I would always recommend an independent moisture vapor barrier. Always. So right here, you can barely see it, but there is a clear tile on the bottom there. Your next layer, single shot, whatever, that'll be, so you have your, depending on your design, if it's a light color or a dark floor, you want to make your base coat black or white. Some people do gray, but I would say for this explanation, we'll say black and white are your two options, right? So if I'm doing a predominantly black and gray or dark blues or whatever, I need to be okay with my base coat showing through. If there's any thin spots, or if I push the micro around or whatever, I need to be okay with that color. So now on the other side, if you have light colors, which are, like for example, like white pigment is less, I don't want to say less potent, but less dense than black. So like if I had a white liquid pigment, it might only be half full. And then sometimes when I have white, maybe I need to use two of them because they're somewhat translucent. If I put it down and you can see through a little bit, I need to be okay with that color. It needs to match. So a lot of times people are doing a white floor or a predominantly white floor, like that front one up there. They might have one, maybe even two white layers underneath their money coat, just to make sure. or they just double up on the pigment. It just depends on how thick you're going. If you're doing a super thick floor because that's better for your design, then maybe it doesn't matter. But if you're just trying to go nice and thin, you don't need a lot of movement in your floor, you just wanted to move it around and just have a little bit of melting, then I would probably do a nice good, at least 1 or 2 white base coats underneath. And there's 2 methods here. So you can do, for your top coat, you can either do black label or you can do urethane. And there's pros and cons to each. If you're trying to go a satin finish or like a more matte finish, I'd probably go with the urethane. You just need to keep in mind your floor will have less dimension, like less of a 3-dimensional effect. Like right here on this floor, you can kind of see it almost looks like there's low spots in the design. That's really just the way the mica settled when it was being manipulated. Now, if I put a satin on that, the whole thing will look more flat. Does that make sense? But some people don't like high gloss. And then there's also the consideration that sometimes satin or matte finishes will actually wear better long term. If you're going to be just beating the crap out of your floor all the time, then a more satin or matte finish will probably give you more longevity in your finished look, I guess. Does that make sense? But black label over there, you can actually see it on the wall, a quart of it. That's like really good stuff. We'll talk about that later. So your grind and seal system, which is right over here, you can either grind and seal, or you can technically do a clean and seal with this. It can be indoor, outdoor. I recommend the Pro for outdoor. Essentially, this is a, and you can stain or you can dye things under this. You can put stencils in your floor, like this, over there on the polish, those different designs. And basically, you just 50-50 this with water. You know, you shake it up real good. It's got a B component. And you just 50-50 with the water and basically double the amount of material you have. And then you just put 2 to 3 layers down. If you have super porous concrete, I would recommend 3, maybe 4 if you think you need it. If it's like a clean and seal, you didn't grind anything, you just cleaned the floor really good, you could probably get away with like 1 or 2 coats. And you don't have to go 50-50. You can do like a 25-75 if you want, but 50-50 it gives you the best results. Same thing. Pros, the outside version. These are both very industrial. A lot of people actually do these. They'll do a power wash outside on their pavers or on their, well, not pavers, or excuse me, their like patios and stuff, and then put this down. This one here is really good for pavers, and you can even do bricks and stuff too. So this is actually named single component, but it's also a single component material. And essentially, you just power wash something off, and then you can just spray this on real thin to win, and it gives you that nice, clean, wet look. All this stuff is antimicrobial, antifungal, gives you a slip resistance, it's hydrophobic, so it's just really, really good stuff. Another one, it really brings things back to life. Let me see here.
Back to the last one.
Yeah.
You gotta clean seals on the left.
So the left is before, and on the right there is what it looks like after. So it's like old, faded, and whatnot. On the right, after you spray this down, it's basically going to have that wet look. So it's you know, same with this picture here. On the left, there's before. It's nice and dusty looking. On the right, you have that nice, clean finish. So it's actually really popular with power washers a lot. So we're getting towards the end here of the PowerPoint version or portion. So you have Meghan's, bulletproof resins, ballistics, right? So technically, Meghan's sells all these things. I just tried to kind of break it up a little bit. Everything for your surface prep needs, your polishing, grinding, any of the tools you need, sundries, advice. You can call the helpline. You can get all the things from Meghan's. Grinders, I mean, everything. Oh, sorry, you want to take a photo of that? I gotta hit the button right as you did it. You good? Okay. All right, so our resin line is the brand Bulletproof Resins. So all of our epoxies, our top coats, minus the ballistics, are all going to be bulletproof resins. Again, all of this is sold at Meghan's Supply and Design. And then ballistics is all the special top coats. You have your Squire, your NCO, your Black Label. So Squire and NCO are the original formulation. So basically the difference would be gloss and satin, essentially. And Black Label is like the easier version, the single component version of Squire. That's probably the most popular over metallics. Squire is certainly the most popular over flakes and medias. Technically, Squire can really go on just about any surface. You don't even need to prep, you just need to make sure it's clean. It's really hard stuff. And then you have your Stealth Coat, which is like a version that will not change the sheen, but it will accentuate the sheen. Does that make sense? So like if you have, for example, if you have an overlay and you have a nice textured overlay, you don't want to make it look like it's underwater. You can put Stealth on it and it'll keep the same sheen of whatever it already has, which is pretty handy. Single component we talked about is the clean and seal. Counterattack we did not talk about. Counterattack, very similar to single component, except that it's a little more, they're all thin to win, but I could say it's a little bit thicker, I would say, than the single component. It's more for like your countertops, your vertical surfaces especially. Like if I was going to power wash a plastic fence, I would probably put Counterattack on that. Bullet Steel Advance is that one. Bullet Steel Pro is that one. And then Obliterate is like a degreaser, very potent degreaser if you need to like do some serious cleaning to a floor. If it's contaminated with a bunch of stuff, Obliterate will get it up. It's actually super, super good. Let me see, I talked about urethanes, talked about polyureas, metallics. We didn't really talk about deep pours so much. Deep pour would be like that big table over there, that river pour. So we have artillery, and we also have, you ever heard of ice epoxy? So we are the USA distributor for ice epoxy as well. They have something called Ice Cast. Basically, it's a really tiny kit. It's a little black bottle, mixed together. You can make inlays. Some people make like coasters. It's the DIY, make pretty much whatever you want stuff. Let me see here. Pigments. So we didn't really talk about pigments. So there's two different types of pigments mainly that we're going to talk about. It's going to be the liquids, which we already mentioned, and then you have your micas. So like anything to do with this floor here. You guys are going to do samples tomorrow. So mica pigments there's actually some right behind you in little bags. There's going to be a pink, a blue, to your right. Let me see here. Yeah, right here. So these are mica pigments here. So basically when you put these in your epoxy, and this might poof a little bit, it's just a little powder, right? And essentially you put this in your epoxy and it's suspended, right? And then you manipulate it. It's gonna settle to the bottom depending on which one you get. So there's some that float, there's some that sink, and there's some that stay suspended. There's micas, there's actually like an aluminum series, there's glitters. Most people just use the micas. There's synthetics, there's organics. There's even different polarities. So they might be negative here, or this one over here might be positive. And depending on the combo of what I use, they'll actually push and pull from each other and make different designs. So you might manipulate the floor, but then depending on the different colors I put in, they'll actually make a different flow as well, which is pretty cool. I think everything on that floor there is all I think that's all synthetic. I don't think we put any organic in there. But even then, you can still see it's moving around. And you can also do something where you take, this is something I really like to do, is so most people when they do this, you want to mix beforehand. Like if I'm doing a metallic, the day before, I'm going to take my A, put my pigment in there, mix it for 4 minutes without introducing air. I'm not going to like make a vortex. I'm just going to be gentle with it, mix it all up, and then you let that sit. The next day, all your air hopefully has come out. There might even be a bunch of bubbles on top. Get rid of that. Basically, I'll just take like an ISO spray and I'll just mist the top. Boom, bubbles are popped. Now I'm good to mix my epoxy and go, right? If you don't do it the day before, you greatly increase your risk of getting what's called a shooting star. So basically, if the floor is going to move, right? And it's going to move more if you have low spots, if you have what you call a bird bath, or just the waviness in the floor, it's going to move around. But if you have chunks in there, or if you have debris on the floor, you can clean it infinitely, but maybe a little particle falls down on your floor. And if anything catches a chunk of mica or there's some undispersed, it'll make like it looks like a comet almost, and you'll get a whole bunch of them all over the floor. Some people like it, most people do not like that. So mixing it beforehand, letting them dissolve and disperse in there, and then you mix your bee and mix it up, excuse me, eliminates most of that issue. But something I like to do is take, and I don't like to do this all the time because this is a very particular effect, but you can actually take, you know, take a little cup or something, put the mica that I want in there, and then I put some xylene on it, and I mix it into like a paste. And then I put it in my A. This would be right before, this wouldn't be the day before. And then you put it in there and it's gonna have an effect because I introduced that solvent to it. It's gonna react differently than everything else. If I did that on one color and then the rest of the colors I didn't do that, I'm probably gonna get cells, massive cells in my floor, which I think is the coolest thing ever. Some people do not like that at all, but some people really like it. Like that's my favorite. I call it like alien skin, but it's a super cool effect. Some people go and they'll spray things. You can take a blower and manipulate it. We're gonna do all these things tomorrow. But there's so many different things you can do. You can take, let's talk about the tools. So there's Magic Trowel, super popular. There's a phenolic roller you can use, which is probably Corey's favorite, which basically the piece that's inside of here, imagine if it's just that piece, but it has like a wax coating on it. And you push that around so it can move freely, but he's using it instead of pulling with this, he's able to push, right? And then some people use what's called a T-bar. This is not a T-bar, but I'm gonna use this as an example. There's like a joint here, and there's like another joint here. And so basically as you manipulate it, the bar will move, and you can kind of just reach out there and manipulate whatever direction. Those are pretty cool. Some people just use regular rollers, and they'll lock it so it doesn't spin, and they'll just push the floor, and some people will actually let them roll, and they'll roll over and give like a blurred effect to their floor. There's all different things you can do. There's different thicknesses you can go. Just keep in mind, when you, regardless of what you do, the floor is going to continue to do what I call melt. So you might push around and it looks perfect. If it's a low spot, it's going to move. Or let's say you did a garage. You know, there's like the slope so water runs out. That's going to have a huge effect. You might manipulate it, and if you put it too thick, the whole design might wash out. And then you have like this, it could still look cool if you plan for it, but if you're not planning for it, your whole thing will. One thing you definitely want to keep in mind when you're doing that is there's a tape you can get. It's like almost like a windowsill type of tape. Not the foam one, but it's like almost like kind of like a rubbery. And you put that down to make a tape dam at the edge so your epoxy doesn't spill out onto the driveway or on the apron. If you get a little bit on the apron, that's okay. You can just, you can put like a poly or something on the apron or put something on it. Just make it like a solid color so it'll still match, make an accent to the floor, but you don't want your whole design spilling out. Something I did not mention earlier is another really good to keep thing, or another reason to keep these around. So let's say, do you have a lip on your apron? No? So you're gonna wanna do what's called a keyway. So if you just have the flat floor and it comes right out in your apron, it's just all flat. But I'm not including the asphalt. So like you have your threshold of your door and then that little square outside. A lot of people have a lip, but if you don't have a lip, you want to make a keyway. You basically take a saw, you want to do like a chalk line or something first, and you make maybe a 1/4 inch or so, and you just make a line. Try to do it as straight as possible, obviously, but the reason for that is not only is it easier to tape, make a tape dam if you need to, and all of those things, but it's going to give you an anchor. So when you're driving in and out, you don't just have an edge where your tires are just hitting this edge all the time. It's going to go in and it's going to anchor. It's going to anchor that whole lip, and it's trust me, it's much better to do that. And then when you tape the other side of it, you can actually you don't want to go down into it because it can wick up the tape, but you just go right to the edge of it, and that'll. If you're doing something like that, I like to use duct tape. So duct tape's really good. It'll stick to just about anything. And if you have a broom finish out past wherever you're trying to stop, duct tape or maybe like the tan construction tape is okay. Blue tape's not going to stick very well to that. Blue, it'll definitely wick. Definitely wick. Um, just keep in mind if you're taping things, don't ever use duct tape anywhere that you plan to coat. So the duct tape adhesive, if any is left behind, can actually repel whatever you're putting down. That's an issue. When you're taping your trim or your drywall or anything like that, you want to be off the floor at least 3/8 of an inch. If you don't have trim or you're going to put trim later, not necessarily a thing unless you're trying to keep the drywall from cracking off if it's broken. But if you go all the way to the floor, you're definitely going to wick up the wall, and then you're going to have epoxy all around your whole border. So in your situation, do you have trim?
I have trim, but I also have 2 inches of cement on the edges before the ledger board.
Okay. Do you have, when you go up that 2 inches, is there a flat spot on top?
It's 2 inches vertical concrete, then there's it's on the ledger board.
But is it like, is it like this, or is it like this on top? I mean, like when you go up, is there like a little lip here?
There's a little teeny lip, and then a 2x6. On top of 2x6 is trim.
Okay. So I would probably tape that 3/8 of an inch off and just accept that anything under that's probably going to get something on it.
I'm hoping it does.
It might.
I want it to.
It might. It's very possible that it might. But as long as you're 3/8 up, your chances of it wicking are drastically reduced. Because I would do the stem wall. It looks better if you do it, so I would do it. You might want to do that beforehand. So what I would recommend is you do all your taping, make a small batch, maybe even reduce it a little bit because it's gonna be just for cutting the walls. Go around the edge. You said, well, it's only 2 inches, right? Are you gonna have somebody helping you?
I don't know yet.
If you don't have anybody helping you, this is what I would do. I would tape all that, make a small batch, add some xylene to it, not a lot, just enough to give you some more pot life, right? Go around, cut your edges, take a handful of flake, dump it on the floor. If you don't have any epoxy on the floor, take a big putty knife, nice wide putty knife, and then scrape it up. And then you push your pile over, scrape it up. And you just do that all the way down the wall. And then when you're done with that, all right, my wall's flaked. Clean the floor. You're gonna get some on the floor and drips, and it's gonna hold the flake. Scrape that all off. Don't keep that. Don't collect that. It's not usable anymore. It's contaminated. Throw that away, and then drop your floor. And then if you're doing the floor and you get some on that flake, when you flake the floor, it'll cover it. So now, a lot of people have like a foot of stem wall. I've seen people have like 4 foot of stem wall. That's a whole nother beast. If you have a number of people helping you, especially if they've done it before, you could just tackle all that at the same time. But if you're doing it alone, I would just recommend doing the wall first. Is it 2 inches at the highest point?
Yeah.
And then it's like, what, less than an inch everywhere else?
No, it's uniform.
Uniform all around?
Flat board, 2-inch wall, concrete,
Okay.
and then it goes back about half an inch, and that's where you hit the 2x6 that's sitting on top of this board.
Okay. I mean, it is cold enough. If you do a good job taping, you might be able to just tack it all at once. It is getting colder, which is going to give you more work time. You won't need to dilute the floor. I'd be very surprised. The work time with MRAP is pretty good. And if the slab's cold, which it's going to be, I mean, yeah, you'll probably be good. But if you're uncomfortable or unsure, then just do the other method. All right, do you guys have any other questions or anything?
I'm good.
What about you?
I mean, kind of, I'm visualizing mine too, because I have the same thing. I have the concrete that goes up all the way around. I was just going to really just paint that black, then do the floor. But if you're saying doing it that way, I'll probably do it that same way.
Well, you could certainly do that. You could certainly have your stem wall a solid color, like an accent or like a border. You could do that. So a lot of people actually do like a solid black border on the stem wall and like a solid black apron, and then the floor has something that just has a little bit of black in it, and it accents crazy. Especially if you have white walls or like a light gray wall, it looks pretty cool. Basically, you want to do that separate. You just do it separate.
So should I do that first, or can I do the floor, then take the floor, and then paint it? What would be better?
I'd probably do the wall first. So if you do the wall first, and you said you only have 2 inches,
Yes, it's about, I'll say not about a little bit further, maybe like 3.
is it flat all the way, or do you have a top piece?
It's flat, goes in, then dry rot.
So you have like an inch on top? Okay. So all that's going to be done by brush. See, it would have been a great example if you guys had the one that was like 6 to 8 inches, because you can hit that with a little weenie roller like this. It's really, really easy and fast. I would say keep in mind, if you guys do, especially if you're doing the solid color, you might need to do 2 layers. You might hit it and it might suck it all in, and then you just want to hit it again. So like if I'm doing a stem wall and I'm gonna flake it, I'll probably, because if let's say for this example, let's say it's a foot or 8 inches or so, right? If I go around with the weenie roller and I hit all that, if I have somebody flaking right behind me, the wall's probably gonna soak all that in, especially if it's like CMU block. It's gonna suck it all in. There's not enough epoxy left over to really grab that flake. And so then I have a full broadcast on the floor, and then I have like an 80% broadcast maybe on the wall, or it might be patchy, it might be 100% here and 75% here, and it just doesn't look as consistent. And consistency is key. In my opinion, for all these systems, consistency is key. If you gonna mess up a little bit over here, the whole thing needs to look like that, and then it's not a mess up, right?
Flakes on the wall, you need to press them after some of them may be coming out like burnt. Stick to that.
You're gonna scrape them later. You go back and scrape them later. I'll go talk about that in a second. So basically, when you come back the next day, you take a scraper, which I'll show you guys tomorrow. You scrape the flake. Otherwise, when you encapsulate, you'll have the standing flake become blades. And you don't want to step on that, not barefoot anyway. And if you're wearing shoes, it's just too textured and you'll trip on it. So you don't want to like gouge the floor, but you're just constant pressure, and you go 4 directions, the 4 cardinal directions, and you'll get all the different standing flakes and have a nice even texture across the whole floor. But you want to do full broadcast. I would never recommend a partial broadcast. So a lot of like the painters that are like doing the Home Depot kits. I mean, the Home Depot kits only come with like, I don't know, a pound or so. It's not as good a look, and if you're doing anything less than 100%, it's hard to throw it up and then get the same percentage across the whole floor. It's not uniform at all, and then maybe I accidentally get one handful that I threw down at too much of an angle, and it just didn't spread out, and now I have one little spot that's 100%, and then the rest of the floor is 60%. It just doesn't look good. So, I mean, I'm throwing handfuls, the whole floor. I bring extra material every time. So extra epoxy, extra flake, extra quartz, whatever it is, extra everything. So if I kick a bucket over or I throw too heavy over here, I don't run out.
I was thinking about this. You can get those with like hand seed sprayers. What about that for just even? Because you can just walk back and it always come out even.
I wouldn't do that. I mean, theoretically, it sounds like a good idea, and I've tested it. You're just throwing so much heavier than that. When you throw it down, you're probably gonna have to babysit it a little bit. So let's say you throw the whole floor, and now standing outside looking back in, the back of the room I might start seeing some shiny spots show through, right? Whether it was a bird bath that was thicker, or I just didn't throw as much there, it might wick up or even eat the epoxy in that, or the flake in that spot, and so I'll have shiny spots. So I need to go either walk back out there, which normally we would not recommend walking back out into your floor, even with the cleats on. I mean, you can only do it with the cleats on, you can't do it otherwise, but I wouldn't. Flake would be the only exception. Like if you had a quartz floor, once you quartz it, there's no walking back into it at all. Like you will make cleat marks all through it. Flake, you can kind of get away with it, but don't do it if you don't have to. But you want to turn around. So let's say I brought just enough flake to do my floor. I throw it out there. It's not super heavy, but it's 100% broadcast. If it eats it anywhere, hopefully I have enough left over to now throw on that spot. But now I'm probably gonna have spots all over that are getting eaten, and I want to go back and rethrow those. And I might babysit it for 30 minutes or so. If it's cold, maybe longer. Now, my preferred method is to have so much flake extra, maybe like a box or 2 extra, which is 40 pounds a box, and I throw it out thick. I mean, I'm just covering the floor. I might have a 1/2 inch of flake on top of my floor. I don't have to babysit that. You know what I'm saying? Now, if I had a super crazy low viscosity or material that'll climb, which I've used another, this is many years ago, I used another company's material one time. I'd never used it before, and I was experimenting, and I threw it nice and heavy. I was like, all right, cool, I don't have to babysit. The next day I came back, it had wicked up in a random spot. I had like little Christmas trees all over my floor. I had to go cut out. It didn't look very good. So if you're using the MRAP, it's not gonna do that. I just heavy. And then I don't have to sit there and babysit it. I finish the floor, I look back, was I consistent? If I look down low and there's an angle of light, let's say there's a light in the back of the room, or if I do have to walk back out there and get a spot, while I'm back there, I'm gonna look out of the garage because the sunlight is gonna show me a reflection of the floor, and I'll be able to see all the spots. And then boom, 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 while I'm in there, I'm just gonna bring a whole bucket with me, and I'm gonna hit everything. And then I'm gonna walk out. You probably wanna lock your garage door open, or before you start, close the door, and then get it to where it's like, I don't know, 2 inches off the floor or so. Pull the release, and then manually lift it up. When you're done, you just pull it down and it locks it open, so it's not in your floor. Because if you close it in your floor, it's gonna make not only gonna make a line, but then it might get stuck shut and everything else, and it's gonna get epoxy all over your door. What else? Any other questions?
Speaking of that, so for the, I'm trying to figure out what you're saying there. So walking in the part of the garage. So mine is level to the point, then I have that maybe a quarter of an inch lip that goes into the garage. I can't visualize how close the garage door sits to that lip, or how far it's out.
Probably like 3 to 5 inches, probably.
Like forward of it.
Oh, I mean, from that, if your garage goes like this and there's a dip, you probably have 3 to 5 inches before the door.
Okay.
I would say it would be probably about average or so.
So how paving or making that flow? Because I'm saying we don't know how it flows, which normally it flows out this way, so it's gonna come this way. How taping or how far out or putting a mat, making that lip, do you want the epoxy and everything to go outside of that lip, or it needs to be in front of it?
So are you gonna do the whole apron, or do you have an HOA?
I have HOA.
Do they care if you do exterior stuff?
They do, but it's a random community. They're letting us do whatever we want to do right now.
Okay. So I'll give you both answers. So if they're not an issue, then I would come all the way to the end. I would come to the driveway, do that whole apron. It's probably, I don't know, between a foot and a foot and a half, probably like maybe 23 feet wide probably. And I would just go all the way out. Now, whether you want to do a different color or not out there from the floor is up to you. The floor itself, for the flake, I would wrap that lip right to the bottom of that lip. So if you're going to do that, then I would tape the bottom of that lip. You want to grind the apron though if you're going to coat it, because it's probably got a broom finish. You want to get rid of the broom finish. You need to get the profile, the 2 to 3. Now, if you were just trying to go down and stop at the door and have anything outside the door just be as it is, make your line, chalk line or tape line. Probably do a chalk line and then tape on that, on the outside of the door. And I would probably do 2 layers of tape, or like, so tape, or well, really it would be better to do it like that, but you're not gonna have epoxy out there. I would be surprised. But you want to not hit it with a grinder. So duct tape will be the best protection, and then just go nice and slow along that edge, and then make a keyway on that line, right? And so then you just tape the outside, and then if you're coming down to your lip, and then you're doing black, or you're even doing the whole thing, I would just go to the keyway. And that keyway, the best way to do it is to have the keyway directly under the door. So if you're like, okay, well here's the threshold here, here's the threshold here, but your chalk line like in the middle-ish. But do your chalk line, and then close the door and see if you see any of it. Because some doors are crooked, right? Whether it's an old door, new door, or somebody hit it with a car. And if you close that door and like, it's like doing this, then you just decide, do I want it to look better when it's open or closed?
What's the purpose of the keyway?
The keyway is to anchor it. So when your epoxy, so you don't have a flat edge for your tire to hit, you want to anchor the end.
Chuck, and this is in several inches on a slab.
Yeah. So if you're stopping at the door If you're going all the way to the asphalt, then you can just go to the end. But if you're stopping at any point, or you don't have a lip and you need to stop at the door or whatever, you want to do a keyway for sure.
Mine's flat, goes up 2 inches beyond the outside edge of the door, and then down to the asphalt.
You can just go right over.
I'll re-keep it.
I wouldn't need you don't need a keyway if you're going to the end. If you're not going to the end, then yes. So if you're doing the whole apron, no keyway. That would be the key distinction. Or if you wanted to have a border by the door of a different color, like solid black or whatever, then I would do a keyway. Wouldn't be necessary, but it would be a cleaner line, if that makes sense. If you're having this floor and then another color here, I would say from a DIY perspective, I would say it would be a much cleaner line. It'd be easier for you to do. So if you don't do it, you just try to go off a chalk line or a tape line. If you make a mistake, then you're probably going to see it. Yeah, when you do your black border, you might be able to finesse it and kind of just touch it up, or maybe you take an oscillator and you kind of get the part that came too far, and then you kind of just go over that. You could probably do that, but it would probably just be easier to just do a keyway. So I wouldn't necessarily go very deep with it, though. I mean, you're not going to straight concrete. If you're just going another color, you just need a little bit. Something I did not mention earlier is how to get corners. So your round 5-inch disc can only get so far into a corner. You got to remove that. So some people call it the multi-tool. I call it the oscillator. It's the oscillating multi-tool, really, but there's a triangle blade you can get. Now there's the Diablo carbide bit from either, I don't know if it's Home Depot or Lowe's. Only one of them sell it, and it's black with like a copper carbide looking bits on it, right? Those are pretty good. You probably need a couple of them, especially you. If you're removing, they're gonna get gummed up, and you're gonna.
If it's on like on a Fen tool,
You know the oscillating tool people cut drywall with? It vibrates. It's got the little flat blade on it. You know what I'm talking about?
right, kind of comes, does that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it just vibrates and you. So there's the triangle attachment. There's even like a tooth-looking attachment. That's gonna be gold. I think they sell it at both Home Depot and Lowe's. Those are good. They're not as fast, but they get in tighter spots. And then you can even go on Amazon and get like the golden triangle one with little. They're much smaller diamonds, but they're also effective. Regardless of what you get, they're gonna get gummed up. So you're gonna be going through them. You might need to buy a couple. I mean, your system looked pretty thick, so you might need a couple. Because not only you gotta remove that, but then you need to kind of rough up that concrete as best you can, right? You can only profile so much with an oscillator, but it's gonna be better than nothing.
How big is the grinder that comes in? If I rent a grinding machine, how big is that, what's that radius?
Are you trying to rent from Meghan's?
Yeah, if I do that.
I think it's like 20 or 30 inches. I can't remember exactly which one it is. It's a big machine. It's pretty heavy. The bigger the better, I would say. You probably have really hard. Both of you probably have really hard concrete, and you're removing. So I would say the bigger the better. If you get, the Home Depot 11-inch like Edco or something, it's going to take you a while, and you might not really get a good profile. So if you're doing soft concrete, small machines are not bad. I mean, you pretty much like mowing the grass, maybe faster. But a hard concrete, you got to go nice and slow, low RPMs, 16 to 30 grit, and then just let it chew. You might even need to sit there for a minute, let it eat. So, good thing you brought that up. So if you're sitting there and you're grinding, right? If you're going too fast, you're only going to get so deep, right? You might need to sit for a second and chew down a little bit, and then work the edge, and you'll feel it. It'll be like boop, 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 and then maybe not that rough sounding, but you'll feel it in the handles. You can feel it digging, and then when it stops digging, move a little bit, and you'll feel it digging again. Then move a little bit, feel it digging again. You want to just work. You want to make a ledge and then work that ledge. That'll be the most effective. Now, if you're making a ton of dust, then maybe check your tools. Maybe that concrete's soft, and they're probably going to give you soft diamonds because you probably have our hard concrete. But if you do make a lot of dust, then maybe give us a call and be like, hey, I'm not, I need to check on this. Because if it's soft tools and your concrete ends up not being hard, you're going to burn them out. You're going to make it like 10 feet. So, but on the flip side, if you're PCDing that off and it's soft and you gouge the floor, that'll be a breeze to get that off compared to hard concrete. but then you need to regrind it to get rid of the gouges. Unless you,
Chemical you can use?
I mean, there's people that chemically remove it, but that is just not worth it, and it might not work. So there's instances where I've gone out. This is years ago. So before I worked here, I actually was doing my own thing, and I would go out, and there was a couple times where, like, you know, it was like a water-based polycuramine or whatever from Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever they got it, and I was able to, and it was like 50-50. Sometimes I would put some solvent on it, like xylene or Reducer 54 or acetone or something, and it would do nothing. And then sometimes I put it on there, and after a few minutes, it would like wrinkle. And if it wrinkled, then I could just scrape it right off. I mean, it would just come off. Like I didn't, like it was never there. But it's a mess. It is an absolute mess. And you got to scoop it up, and you just have this glob and mass of just toxic chemicals. And it's, yeah. And then, you know, when the solvents, you need to like shovel it into buckets, and it's a mess. And that's very flammable at that point. You just have a big open bucket of solvents and epoxy all dissolved. But then when that dries out, if I get that on something, now I have epoxy on whatever I spilt it on. So it's a thing. It might work. If it can make it easier, but it can also make it harder. So if you want to go that route, then I would do a test spot in the corner somewhere, pour a little bit, you know, and just kind of come back in a couple minutes.
I haven't found anything that works yet.
I would try xylene probably.
What is it?
Xylene.
So what's in it? What's the chemical?
It's like a mineral-based solvent. I couldn't tell you exactly what's in it. It's like something with an X.
Parts already on mine. They came like they didn't leak to it.
I mean, I would just PCD it. That's what I would do. I don't, the amount of fumes and whatnot, and if you get on your skin, xylene like goes right to your liver if it gets on your skin. So it's pretty bad. Now again, like I said earlier, it's my favorite one to use. It's the most effective, but well ventilated area, you know, it's pretty standard. But yeah, I would highly recommend you use these. And then, you know, get some silica sand, which they can order that for you. And I would probably have a couple buckets full of that, or a couple bags. It comes in like 50-pound bags. So, all right, what else do you guys got?
Silica sand, I can use like plastic sand.
You could go to Home Depot and get sand. Problem is, if it's too big of a particle size, you know, your diamond, right, is sitting flat. If it's too big, your diamond's just going to sweep it away. You want something fine like silica sand, like that beach over there. The finer, the better, because you want it to be able to get under this. Otherwise, you're sweeping it away. I've tried both. I've tried heaping globs of sand. I've tried quartz. I've tried different things. And if not only would my shroud push it away, right, but then if it did manage to get under the shroud, then my diamonds were kicking it out. And I was like, well. So I found when I went to the really fine stuff, I threw it under there. The diamonds were able to go over it, and then it worked way better, like just astronomically better. Also, people do that same method for just grinding hard concrete in general. So the same principle, it keeps the diamonds open, right? So you're crushing that, and you're making dust. So if you're not getting a lot of dust because you're not able to cut the cap, I'm artificially making dust by throwing that in there, and it's grinding that, and then it keeps the diamonds clean. So now, let's say you remove all that, and you didn't gouge at all. You can still see, which you shouldn't because you ground it before, but if there's a spot or something where it's nice and dark and there's still a bunch of cap there and you're like, oh man, and you're just grinding it and it's not really doing a whole lot, throw some of that down and then spritz or mist some purple power onto it and then grind it nice and slow. And that might help. So the combination of all these things are tools you can use. But again, slow RPMs. I can't stress that enough. If you go fast, you might overheat your diamonds and they just glaze over. If they glaze, I mean, it's basically smooth, and it's just not doing anything. So, and that's very frustrating, extremely frustrating. I've glazed like 6 tools in a row one time when I first entered this industry. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just like, all right, I'm gonna grind the floor. Put the tools on and started going. Cranked it as fast as it would go. I'm gonna get this done faster. Cranked it up, and I didn't have enough weight on my machine. I had a tiny machine, and I just glazed every tool I had. And I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. I spent like days. I ended up having to hand grind the whole floor because I just glazed all my tools. That sucks. That really sucks. I've had that happen actually more than once when I first started, and we had to, if I were to add it all up, it was several thousand square feet of hand grinding, and it's just awful. It's very awful. Something else we didn't talk about is pucks. If you want to grind something, this is like this is actually a medium 30. If you want to grind the floor but not necessarily profile it like you would a coating, if I were just trying to clean the floor, I use something like this, and it would actually, I'd probably use like a 60 puck maybe, and then I could tighten the floor before I do like a grind and seal, because you technically don't need to profile the grind and seals like for like patios and stuff. People do them in garages too, but then if it's a tighter, if I tighten up the concrete, I don't need to use as much material, right? So I can save myself a whole layer or 2 layers or however many gallons that might be, right? Some people actually use these for profiling and all that stuff, but around here it's just the concrete's so hard, I wouldn't do that. You have different shapes. You got your diamonds, your rhombuses, and your there's dots. Don't use the dots. I would not use the dots around here. You have bars, single bar, double bar. If you have the option, use a single bar. You're gonna get more head pressure. If you're in Florida on softer concrete, I would use double, maybe even use something different, whatever. Bars, double bar, single bar is pretty standard. This actually here, I forgot to show you guys this. This is an example of a shot blasted floor. That's going to be a CSP3. That is basically the perfect profile right there for a coating. These are some pucks. These are used from everything from polish to honing. Some people use them for cleaning up other things. Here's some other kind of pucks. There's like hybrids, ceramics, resins. There's all different all types of things. You've seen that. Here's some more of the different quartz blends. If you guys want to look at that. And then you can make custom quartz blends. We're about done here. And you can make custom flakes. What did you say? Card. Yeah, you want to go ahead and shut that down. All right, folks online, we're wrapping it up here. Hope you guys had fun. Appreciate you coming.